I thought I knew what was going on in the Sheriff's Department. And then I was appointed by Supervisor Don Kanabi, and I'd also mention Supervisor Zev Yaroslavsky joined us. Zev, thank you very much for coming. But each of the supervisors appointed a member to the commission, and it was as a result of an ACLU lawsuit that brought to light some of the issues that were going on within the county jail system and beyond that permeated into the Sheriff's Department. And we looked at it, and I went in thinking that, you know what, I'm not an expert on jails, and I'm not sure, you know, what I can add to that other than Don Kanabi said, you'll be the only person representing policing on this commission. The others are retired federal judges, Reverend Chip Murray, a civil rights leader, and then an expert, Alex Buzanski, from on jails and prisons from up north. And so I figured, you know, if I can add some value to it and be sensitive to the needs, officer safety needs of the deputies, then I'll do that. I'll give it my very best. And I thought that I wouldn't hear anything new. I thought that I was used to all of that. And when I got on there and heard the testimony from deputies, from inmates, from doctors, nurses, lawyers, the people embedded in the jail and the ACLU, and so many others, and the common themes that kept recurring, and they were unfortunately things that should never be found in a police organization: favoritism, nepotism, pay-to-play, brutality, and corruption. And those are not words I use lightly when describing any part of a law enforcement agency, because it's counter to everything we believe in. But in seeing that, I thought, how do we change this? How do we fix it? And as Lee Baca was questioned by Rob Bonner, one of the federal judges who were on the commission, who do we hold accountable? Or how do we hold you accountable? And he said, you hold me accountable, and if basically, to paraphrase, if you don't like the way things are, then you don't elect me. And I thought about that initially, and I thought, God, that's a tough statement. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized with our system, that is the truth. That's a factual statement, and that's how the system works. So I looked at jumping in a year prior, and I would have had to take a 2-year leave of absence from Long Beach that really wouldn't have worked. I would have been abandoning my current job. And then looked and thought, we issued 63 recommendations from the Jail Commission for a change. I was hopeful in the next year we'd see some substantial progress based on those, and they worked on those. But what instead we saw in the coming year was additional scandals, the racial profiling in the Antelope Valley, hiring scandals, and then ultimately the indictment of 20 deputies. And when you look at that, I thought to myself, what struck me was 20 deputies that came on the job, maybe as kids growing up wanted to be police officers or deputies. And they get on the job, you presume to do good. And what happened between that time and now being federally indicted? And I thought the tone that was set at the top of the organization with one individual in particular was, push the envelope, I got your back, work in the gray. And I thought to myself, you know what, that's an abdication of leadership, totally. And while everybody's responsible for their own behavior, these deputies, I think, were doing what they thought was expected of them from the top of the organization. And now their families are upside down, and they're looking at losing their freedom. And to me, that's just, you know, we've got to start from scratch. We need to go in and just set a new tone completely of what's acceptable and what's not. So I look at that, and I think what the organization needs today is an outside set of eyes, a fresh perspective, somebody not from within the organization. And I say that because I've experienced that myself. In the LAPD, when things were not going well, I wrote basically a 100-page plan on what was wrong and what needed to be done to fix it. And I applied for the chief's job. I didn't get the job. Bill Bratton got it. I shared the plan with Bill, and we used that plan to help as a foundation to turn the LAPD around. But in looking at that, we would sit at a conference table when he first arrived, and I had known him for many years prior. We would sit down, and I thought in the back of my head still, while he had every qualification in the world to be there, we didn't need an outsider. We had the plan, we could do it ourselves. Nobody knew the organization better than we did. Well, I was wrong, because when we would sit down and he would ask questions, the questions he would ask weren't even on our radar, because we had grown up in the organization and we didn't see options or opportunities that he was asking about, because he had been other places where that kind of things had proven successful. So I look at that ability today to be able to take those lessons learned from there, to be having the only one of the candidates who's run a police department, which I think is a critical piece. There's no time for on-the-job training here on this one. We've got an organization, and it was mentioned it's a major business. It's got a $2.8 billion budget, and we have a deputy overseeing the budget, an assistant sheriff rank, but a deputy sheriff. we need to bring in a CFO to be able to look at it, look for opportunities to save money, streamline services and how we deliver that kind of services, those services. So I look at, those are kind of things that inside you've always assumed that it's going to be somebody of this rank will move into this spot when the guy before him leaves, which is what happened recently, rather than saying, is this the person, is this the right fit for the job? And really to turn it around or turn any, and I'm talking to people who've been extremely successful in every aspect of business, and what I'm saying to you is business 101, but it hasn't been done in public safety and in public service as much as it should be. And that's to set the bar high, very clear expectations of what we want and where we're trying to go, milestones on how we get there, and then command accountability systems in place to hold people accountable for their behavior and their performance, both on and off duty. And then to be able to move forward with that in mind, based on a foundation of respect. When you look at the responsibility of the Sheriff's Department, it's very wide-ranging. But a big part of it is the jails. And you look at the jails and it can house up to 22,000 inmates. A lot of those 22,000 people are very hardcore, very difficult people to deal with. But a lot of them are there because they never had a shot from day one. 15 to 20% of them are mentally ill, and they're in there oftentimes for acting out on that illness. And we treat the illness as a crime. And we've got to get away from that. And as the sheriff of the largest county in America, there's an opportunity to be able to use that bully pulpit to be able to reach out and hopefully get federal, state, foundation money to be able to look at getting community-based mental health clinics, community-based mental health courts. So there are alternatives other than incarceration for those that are acting out on mental illness issues. So I look at that and I think, you know, having spent a year on the Jail Violence Commission, studying the organization during its darkest days, and all of the lessons learned in those 63 recommendations as a foundation for moving forward, as well as then I think the broad coalition of support that I enjoy going into this. In order to be successful, we're going to need connections at the state level, at the county level, and at the national level to be able to move forward and be as effective as we can, as quickly as we can. And then within the policing world, the sheriff is kind of the, I guess the analogy would be a quarterback for public safety for the county. In order to be a quarterback, you have to have a good team in place moving forward. And the team we bring, while the sheriff has always grown up in the organization and has the full strength and support of the LASD, what I bring to the table is 29 years with LAPD and the network that comes with that to bring alongside the sheriffs. The network from Long Beach PD, the second largest city in the county, and that network. And then as Dave mentioned, having been last year's president of LA County Police Chiefs Association and having the full support and endorsement of those 45 chiefs from every other city in the county that has their own police department, there is a team. And there we move forward together with the same vision, the same mission, and we don't have to be exchanging business cards at an event. We already know each other, we know our strengths and weaknesses, and we move forward then to try and improve things as quickly as possible. The vast majority of men and women in the Sheriff's Department are looking for change. They're looking for clear expectations as to what do you want them to do, and knowing that if they work hard and do the right thing, they'll be rewarded. Not rewarded for who they go drinking with, as they say, whose car they're in, whose campaign they gave to, and those kind of things, which is part of the whole corruption piece we're talking about. They want it to be on the level, in a word. So we'll do that. We'll put it back on the level. Accountability will be back in place. And people will know what they're working for and how they need to get there. And to restore public trust to a once great organization and make it, in the eyes of everybody, something to be proud of once again, both within the policing world and in the community that we serve, is such a critical piece for law enforcement nationwide. Because people around the country in policing have looked for many, many years to Los Angeles, both the LAPD and the LASD in particular, for best practices. And they call and they come out here and they say, hey, we got this gang issue or we got this whatever issue. How are you guys doing this? How are you addressing it? And we want to be right back on top there, being the leader in law enforcement and making each and every one of you, who we rely so heavily on, proud of our organization again. And the ability is there to be able to do that. Let me open it up. Any thoughts, questions, suggestions, or anything you have, I'd love to hear. Let me start right here.
Me and everybody else